Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let's adjust some of our settings here. I'm not sure quite what's going on. Let's see. Anyway, so welcome. This is another edition of Together We Write. Had some technical issues yesterday, so we're making up for a little bit of lost time. Doing a couple of trying out some new things over the summer, trying to get ready for the fall semester. So, welcome to anyone who's watching this. My name is Chris Perzicki. I'm an assistant professor of uh, what am I doing these days? English, humanities, and just about anything that comes my way anymore. Over here at University of Wisconsin Green Bay, and sporadically over the summer, more regularly over the fall and spring semesters, I put on this little live stream to cover all things writing, professional, technical. Try to cover just about anything that comes across, comes through for my classes that I teach here on campus. But just about anything except creative writing. That's probably the one area I'm definitely the one area I'm not don't have the capacity to really talk about. I'll leave that to my much better off colleagues here on campus and down the hall from me. Anyway, so we are over the summer teaching a professional writing for business majors class. So this particular session is going to cover our topics, as this stream usually does, covers whatever topics we have going on in class. And we're taking on a couple of things. It's a compressed 6-week course, so I'm essentially rolling in a pretty hefty. It actually doesn't. It's not too much worse, but we do have a couple of things compressed in here. So we're talking about information visualization and how we put together data, statistics, quantitative information, numbers, and we turn them into something that's a little bit more visually appealing. For a lot of folks out there, the thought of looking at spreadsheets and data numbers is enough to even thinking about it puts you to sleep. It can be a lot to if you're not if you don't understand if you're not the expert, if you don't have the training, if you don't have the background knowledge in what those numbers represent, it may seem very abstract. So, uh, translating that information into, say, a pie chart or a graph can be a much easier way for the non expert to understand, comprehend the information that you're giving them. And this goes for images as well. So, we're covering a lot of ground today. And for our class, we're taking that information and we're turning it into. We have one of two options for my uh, participants in my classes with this particular unit. They have once they gather their content, they create some charts and graphs and whatnot. They turn that into either a brochure or an infographic, and they have a choice of either one of those. So what we're going to do today is go through a few things, and I'll again, this is for the benefit of my students primarily, but this is out there on the YouTubes, and so this is open for everyone. Also, oh, and I still have the graphic from last week too. I'll have to change that. Like all over the place today. What is going on? I've got a. What is? I'm not even sure. Okay, that's the background. All right. But then I've got this. Oh man, this is what happens when you don't. I had the screen going before, so I wasn't able to. I was trying some things out. Anyway, trying to figure out how to add some background music to these streams because I think there's this void, and so looking for just as a side note to get us started, I guess. If you're ever looking for soundtracks, background music, even sound effects, there's all sorts of resources online. Uh, Lots of free, like I default to the freebies. And I'm not going to get into the details, but a lot of a lot of the assets that I try to use and I promote in my any sort of workshop or class that I'm teaching is Creative Commons licensed materials, images, music, you name it, it's out there. Now it can be a challenge to find stuff just like any music that you're looking for. If I put background music on these streams, I risk being uh, running afoul of the copyright police. And for most of our streaming channels, that could render your video mute. In fact, for all I know, this video could be muted. I don't think it is. I've got it mute, but anyway. So one good resource is the Free Music Archive. It's a little bit older. In fact, I think it's been sort of swallowed up by the Tribe of Noise. But the Free Music Archive does have some good royalty-free music that you can use. And if I were to like search instrumental, this is what I was looking at before, and it pulls out so 84 tracks, instrumental reggae. To give me something I can listen to, and so it's just a matter of finding what is going to be appropriate, right? So ideally, I would put together some sort of playlist, have it in the background. There's other kind. There's SoundCloud is another good one. A Tribe of Noise has some good things, but just to give you an idea, I was looking at this before. This is in my cart, and I believe it's also in pounds, so it's harder to translate. But it costs a little bit of money to license these tracks, and just be aware of that. I'm trying to think of what it is. There's also the name of the site, but I want to find it before I move on. Free Sound, this is another good one if you're looking for just sound effects for a variety of purposes. This is the place to go. I don't know if it has music on it. I don't remember, but just little odd little sounds, good for sound effects and other things. Anyway, it's a little off topic. So here we are. Let's go ahead and jump into things. Here's a brochure template. I'll talk about this in a little bit. As I mentioned before, we're looking at a couple of different things right here, but primarily what we're looking at is over the next hour or so how we put together information. How do we take information, turn it into something that's like a basic pie chart, and use it for a variety of purposes. So I'll try to go through that as quickly as possible and sort of talk my way through it. And let's go ahead and just get started. I've got a number of um, old slideshows here. Let me see if I get the right ones. All right. Let's see. All right, so here we are. We've got information visualization. And so this is somewhat of an older slide deck. I kind of happened across this. I forgot I had it. So I'm going to sort of wing it here a little bit. And we're talking about information visualization. These are the forms of visualized forms of data, whether it's numerical, could be historical. We'll talk through a few of these over the next hour or so. But there's a number of things we want to be considering whenever we do this. All right, let's see. All right. So one thing we want to think about first is how to read a graph. So I'm going to pull up this is why I should have checked this out beforehand. Where can I find a graph? Let's see. Hope everyone's having a good week so far. It's fairly nice. Looks a little bit cloudy, but so here's an example. Here's one just pulling a random one off of the old internet here, and it should be fairly familiar. In fact, most of you can probably read something like this a little bit better than I can. We're talking about businessy type things. So we have a chart here, annual sales trend. It might help if I move it so I'm out of the way. All right, there I am in the little corner. Let's throw myself over that way. All right, so we've got a chart here. All right, so one of the things that we want to be thinking about, and I'm gonna scoot over here. One of a One of these days, I'm going to teach an information visualization course, and it's going to be all about graphs and charts. And one of the textbooks would be this wonderful Alberto Cairo's How Charts Lie. This is a primer for explaining why how charts and visualized forms of information can hide the truth or take a it can not, I don't want to say intentional. I think Cairo, the author, does a really good job of saying, this is not always intentional. It's very rarely intentional, but often the people who are making charts are doing so not as well as they could be. So one of the things, and he says that we should try to be more literate about visualized forms of information because not being able to understand charts is just as bad as creating poor charts to begin with. So let's start with just how to read a graph. Pretty straightforward. We're looking at our title, annual sales trend. We're looking at captions, and we're looking at sources. This particular one does not have, we have our title here. We have some our legend here. We have a source way down here in the middle. Most good charts should have a source, right? And that's really important because you should know where that data comes from. I want to say the last time I gave this, went through this slide deck, I had actually one site that I had found that the source that they were pulling from was from their own site. So they had done their own research, they had created pie graphs from this information. And so one of the conversations that comes up is what's the problem with this? Well, if you're only relying on your own information, that's fine, but it doesn't. Most people don't take that extra step to confirm this. So if I'm looking at a chart and I use this to make a judgment or form an opinion or otherwise just try to acquire some sort of basic understanding about something that's happening out there in the world, using when that information is self-contained and doesn't really look how blurry I am. I don't have my glasses on. I've got my contacts in today, but I'm looking really blurry right now. This is probably the same issue I was having yesterday. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so that's not distracting me. Anyway, so here we have we have our chart. We have our measurements, units, scales, and legends. Here we have you got our legend down here. We've got our percentages. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Should be able to. All right, so we've got our, this is a pie chart. So usually pie charts work in percentages. And so we're pretty good there. Visual clues, colors, and designs. This one's fairly good. Each pie slice has a different color, makes it easy to read, and they all coordinate with the legend down here. So this gives us a good idea. If I go up to, this one as well, orange, green, high contrast, easy to read, easy to determine the difference. Here's a better one, like as far as measurements go. If we didn't have our social media icons in the way, we could see sales, 25,000, 50. There's an equal distance, logical. Every 25,000, there's this a line, right? So I'm assuming if I could see this, I'm assuming this would be 100,000, and this all seems to work, right? They all line up, seems pretty kosher. All the years are good. So this is a fairly simple, but it's also a well-designed chart. We'll look at some bad examples in a minute. So otherwise, this particular chart does not have annotations nor explanations because these are examples that are on this site in Telespot. Right, here's another one. It's a little bit more congested. We've got here's this one. This title, per capita income for 5 age groups. This tells us exactly what the chart's about. This is almost like our purpose statement, right? This is telling us what we're looking at. Amazing how often we ignore these pieces of information, but they're very important. Here again, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 seems to work with the numbers that are here. Again, there are no annotations nor explanations because these are examples, but otherwise they would also tell us some information like what is actually happening here. And so that's another important piece of information, making sure that you have, all of the translation. How do I best understand this? And then that leads us up to patterns, trends, and relationships. Tell us about, what is happening. What are some of the trends? What should I take away from this information? What are the relationships between the points of information? So so for per capita income for 5 age groups, what does this tell us? If this were a real chart, I could look at this and say, well, income increases up till about age 54, 55, and then decreases for whatever reason. It's not telling me the reasons why, though. It does show us a pattern. So basically, what I can say is, and it's not based on this graph. Okay, I think this is one of the common mistakes is based on the information is what you're referring to the actual body of information that the chart is drawn from. But the problem, one of the problems that Cairo mentions is that we too often take for granted that these visualized forms of information are accurate. They are let's say that they're trustworthy, but let's assume that they are. But we also have a tendency as a consumer public to look at these pieces of information and draw our own conclusions. Okay, so digging through some of this, if a good chart is not going to be the foundation of any good argument, only an illustration of that argument. So be aware of that. All right, so here is kind of the whole point of this spiel. This particular part is looking at some bad graphs is a really good way of seeing exactly how we are tricked and how easily we are, I don't say deceived, but how these charts can kind of foil our understanding. And let's see if I can get this. Is it? Now, yeah, I'm not sure why it keeps doing that, but I'm sure no one's disappointed in not seeing me. All right, so looking at this particular chart, we've got job and health insurance losses accelerating. So you have a title. But look at this. We have 45, 40, 44, 45, 46, 47 million. And then we have on this side the unemployment rate. What we have here are two forms of information on the y-axis. And I think most everyone should know that we usually typically have one x-axis down here horizontally and one vertical y-axis. And then those two points of information, where they converge is how we create our line chart. This unemployment rate, I'm not even sure this coincides with this. So 47 million uninsured Americans, but it's not quite as clear as it could be. Okay, here I believe this is okay. March, April, May, June, July. So it skips a month, right, and goes up. Now it wouldn't be feasible for this particular chart, but most charts should start at 0. Again, this would probably be unfeasible given the amount of the numbers here, but starting in March, for example, it's a weird baseline to start from. This one, as I mentioned before, good cues. Like this is getting more design focused, but we have this looks like a pie chart here, but it's turned at some sort of angle so that you get this. Okay, here I guess this is a wedge here, or maybe this is a wedge. So this is a pie slice here that's 2%. Here's one that's 8%. And the only distinction between them are these shadings, which is almost impossible to see with this weird multicolored background. It also being at this angle makes the representation very odd. This 2% slice almost looks as big as the 8% slice, even though 2% is obviously should be a fourth of the size of this. Here, This almost looks, because the shading is so bad, I mean, this is all out of whack. This 42% is almost half, yet this looks, because of this angle, makes it look like it's only a third. So, very poor design choice here. That's pretty common. Here's another good one. Kanye West. If I'm not sure what he's going by these days, but this is an older one, I think. $1.3 billion net worth. And here's how it breaks down. I don't know if you can see this, but the different shades of green are used to distinguish each category. They're almost imperceptible, the difference between them. So, poor choice there. And one of the things we want to be very careful of, as a side note, is be thoughtful of those who are colorblind. We don't often think about this. Let me just quickly Google how many. There are approximately 350 million colorblind people in the world. Okay, that's 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women are colorblind. So that's a pretty significant portion. So if you're looking at a crowd of 100 people, there's a pretty good chance you've got about two, three of those individuals are going to be colorblind. So that's enough in my book that you should be thinking about that whenever you're creating any sort of visualized form of information. And this includes presentations, which I'll talk about next week. Now, this one is especially poor because the numbers are way off. Okay, 1.25 billion. So this is this is the vast majority of this pie chart. Yet it only takes up less than a quarter, maybe. 300,000 is almost the same size as 4 million. So anyway, obviously way off for a number of reasons, but probably one of the worst examples of charts that I've seen in a while. Here's another popular one. And again, if I think going forward, make a little mental note about changing this presentation up a little bit, kind of renewing it. This one's fairly old. I'm not sure exactly what year this came out, but it's one of the a more infamous example of lousy pie charts. It tells us it's supposed to be telling us how uh, perceptions towards legalized marijuana has changed over the years. So we've got 1997. Last year was 43%. This is 51%. And then they use this pie chart. But the better example would be something like this to show us how those perceptions have changed, because we have a change over time, a timeline or some sort of graph like this, chart like this would show us much better than a pie chart. So that was a poor choice on some poor designer, some poor soul intern made a mistake here, and now it lives on in internet eternity. So yeah, that's just a quick rundown of some charts here. Let's close that one out. So let's how do we work with this stuff? Let's close her out. Go to infographics and timelines. All right, so this one's a little bit different. Obviously, the little title here is a little bit off. Not for this is for another course, English 201. I'm not even sure what that is. All right, so infographics. Let's see if my am I working yet? Hey, there we go. Who knows? I have no idea why that does that. Just sort of gets blurry every once in a while. Anyway, infographics. Simply put, These are visual representations of information sets. So you have wide arcs of information or assemblages, collections of data and information that you might that have some sort of relationship between one another. Number of different reasons to be using info to be creating infographics. Okay, uh, they all kind of come from the same building blocks, right? These are visual techniques, complex information. We again, just like graph, any sort of good graph and chart, it's taking complicated information and turning it into something that's, excuse me, much easier to read and digest. Charts, graphs, images, these sorts of uh, tables, other forms of graphically rendered information is what we're talking about here. But more importantly, infographics sort of take a bunch of different pieces and put them into a cohesive whole to tell some sort of story. And I put this in bunny quotes because it doesn't necessarily uh, become this story with a beginning, middle, and end, but it does sort of create this cohesive argument, let's say. That sort of defined message is what we're looking for. Like, what is the purpose? So we'll look at some examples. Here we have um, the evolution of man, and it goes through this sort of a tree shape. We've all seen some sort of variation of this, where we have way down at the earliest primordial stages up through the current. And this is an older infographic, but it's one of the earlier attempts at sort of visualizing this evolution. I mean, very complex, very complicated. A surprising few of us really have a basic understanding of what it entails. A lot of us, myself included, couldn't even go into some of the details that have been sort of expanded on since we were in uh, biology classes. All right, so infographics, unlike a lot of, say, a lot of papers or most papers, research papers do not really care so much about looking good, right? Infographics do care a little bit about being appealing visually. This is, there's a little bit of for those of you with marketing interests, infographics are a really powerful way of communicating information. Rather than slogging through a 20, 30 page paper that says something, hey, you could look at this infographic that tells you the exact same thing. Now, as I mentioned before, there is something that's very much lost when you lose all of those details. So, as you're putting together your infographic, you want to be aware of the information that you're leaving out. Okay. In addition to the visual elements, there's also short, very short pieces of written information. This is important because we'll look at some examples. Notice that the written, all the text, all the written pieces are very short. Okay, the focus is clearly on the visual information, right? And also again, back to the appealing composition, it should be appealing to a general audience. Okay, so usually don't see infographics that are um, geared at a very narrow audience. They're usually used to convey, again, complex information to those who are not experts. Okay, here's a good example of one. The aroma of frying bacon, and here's one that's for medical healthcare system in the U.S. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit. So this one is very complex. It's telling us talking about the chemical balance, chemical makeup of bacon, or the smell of bacon, and why it smells so good. Uh, for at least for most of us, when you smell bacon, it's very compelling, to put it mildly. All right, this one does have a little bit larger. For most of us know scientific information is very complicated, and it does take years and years of training to fully appreciate all that's being told to us in a written form. Science writing is a whole nother challenge. This one, approximate number of volatile organic compounds detected in the analysis of fried bacon's aroma, mainly hydrocarbons, aldehydes, ketones, and alcohols. I think I'm pronouncing those right. So it's telling us in very simple terms what the breakdown is. And so this is sort of this introduction. Okay. Here we have tells us going through the process. Here we have very visualized. The compound is sort of rendered as an illustration. Here we have a piece of bacon. This is it necessary? Is it illustrative? Yeah, I mean, is it necessary? No. This is just a sort of an anchor. We don't need it. Almost forget it's there when every time I look at this. So this is going through a process, and it gives us some percentages. Here's some more compounds, and that's about it. Here we have our Creative Commons license down the bottom here, which is great. Some other video go over those, how those are different. All right, so here we have 150. So according to this infographic, we have 150, approximately 150 number of volatile organic compounds. Here's one piece of information. Here's another. Here's another. So we have illustrations, highlighted numbers, and we also have line charts. Okay, all of these are in here. In this example, this one is a little bit more, I believe this was Time Magazine. I can't remember where it's from, unfortunately, sorry. But this one's a little bit more congested, a little bit more advanced, a little bit more complex, I mean. And so here we have the use of medical equipment being used to illustrate the issues with the American healthcare system. So the mess we're in, again, it's telling us the argument very clearly. Now, regardless of your opinion on the state of the U.S. healthcare system, this title is telling us it's making an argument, and it's being pretty clear about where this is headed. Okay, if I'm talking about how amazing the American healthcare system is, probably not going to start with the mess that we're in, right? So, this is what we're talking about. This is, looking at charts and not taking for granted that they're very persuasive. This is the rhetorical power of infographics. Is they're very compelling in how they convey information. All right, annual healthcare spending, while other nations are going up. All right, so there's this 69. All of these pieces of information. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is a huge infographic broken down into sections to make it easier to read. Here we have a timeline down here. I think that's a timeline. Just other pieces of information. Notice that the writing is very, very, very short. Title, caption, source. These are great charts. They're good, but they're telling us a particular story, right? All of these amount to convincing us of a certain argument that's being made. Okay. All right. So another form of infographic, and we looked at one that actually included. This one's sort of a timeline, a little bit more abstract, but this is more like millennia eras, right? I don't think this is actually a timeline, but it looks like one. All right, so timeline is very similar. So not unlike chemical compounds, um, time is a form of data that's measured, but also in a sense also qualitative by meaning it has certain qualities. And so we might think of, don't necessarily think of dates, but also eras. So trying to think of, sure, we'll look at an example in a minute, but as I'm thinking about it, so what are some of the like if we think about the Green Bay Packers, oh, it kind of becomes your go-to default example being here in Green Bay. So we have in several eras. We have the Favre era, we have the Rodgers era. Now all of the news lately has been, oh, is this going to be the Love era, referring to Jordan Love, the new quarterback, right? So this really doesn't have a whole lot to do with dates per se, but it does speak to a certain stretch of time that's represented by a person or a movement, a collective behavior, a community, what have you. So again, complex events in history here are portrayed in timelines. Same as your data-driven infographics, verbal and visual elements kind of working together to tell a story, tell us give us some sort of argument. Uh, Unlike the other examples we looked at, a timeline has a sort of, I shouldn't say sort of, is constrained to a very linear arc. Okay, that linear arc can take different forms and shapes, as I'll show you in a second, but it's usually from point to point. Okay, so we look at Voyager here for as an example. I'll zoom in, and you can see that it goes from the launch date up through I can't remember how long it goes, 2010 or so. But here we've got like planets, and these are all events and planets that the Voyager 1 and 2 satellites where they went. So here's a kind of a cool example of this. Shows how the trajectory of those satellites. Is it a satellite? I don't know if Voyager is technically a satellite since it's not a probe. Yeah. Something that's probably a little bit less sophisticated. We have 70 years of Batman evolution. So we have a similar thing. So we have this, not necessarily working with. Here we have one that's working with decades, but it breaks down a little bit over time. 1939. Okay, here's the first rendering of Batman, and here we go through the decades, and then we have starts to get a little bit more refined because sort of these representations encapsulate certain um, renderings of the Batman character. Here we have the cinematic version from the late 80s, early 90s, cartoon version, movie version, another movie version, no, that's cartoon, I think, another movie. All right, so this is more of a visual sort of, you kind of see the visual transformation of this um, this character. Now I'm kind of wondering. Here is another one. I want to know. Here is. Oh, I wish I. This used to go to a link to a website. Sorry, I'm kind of rediscovering these slide decks as I'm going through this. So a few questions to ask yourself. How are the sources cited? These are really important questions to ask whenever you see a chart. I challenge you to look next time you're checking out the news. Anytime they use a chart or a graph, uh, where are the sources cited? Where are they pulling this information from? Who created this? Ideally, I would say you want a creator or an author that is clearly you can determine who that is fairly easily. You can know what they're about. In an in-class demonstration, there's one site that I go go to, and they tell you they do great work. Who the creator, the author is, gives you links, gives you some background information. Also, be thinking about what's the purpose, what is the intent. Now, usually that is best understood in the context of other forms of information. So, in the news, if they're using a chart and it's telling you a certain thing, what is the purpose of that? One second. And when was it published? I often see, like most of the examples that I'm showing you. I hate. It's embarrassing to know that they're pretty old. I need to really update some of these things. It'd be nice to find some new examples, and I see them every once in a while. I just forget to add them to this. The biggest question that it's pretty straightforward. We've heard the saying before: "Follow the money." Uh, yeah, I mean, same as charts. Who's paying for it? Again, the examples that I usually show. Once you see who's paying for that in paid for the research that's behind those pieces of information, tells you a lot. Um, that can tell you a great deal, right? So if you have the ability, if you have the time, you should really be making sure to check out the sources that are being cited in those infographics, any sort of visualized information. Check those sources. This should go for, without saying, for any sort of research. Don't take for granted. It is astonishing how much bad research is out there. Uh, not my finer moments in online debates I've gotten into with total strangers. I know you should never do this, but I get sucked into it every once in a while. And you just ask, show me your sources. And the things that people refer to base well-intentioned opinions and in beliefs, but the sources that they're getting this information from are outlandish. Uh, the internet is fantastic because it's democratized information. Like you are watching, you could not watch this terrible video 2 decades ago. When I was in school, you didn't have this type of thing. Nowadays, you have, I could write a blog post that says any piece of information, just make something up, and someone could cite that, and because there's a citation on there, people would just take for granted that my information is sound. Astonishing how much that is not the case. Okay, finally, images, graphics, symbols. How do those contribute to the content? Is it good representation? This is something we see a lot. We're really enjoying a nice off, like politically speaking, we're off season right now. It's amazing how quiet things seem. Wait until the primaries come up, and of course, November next year, a big election. Watch how people and information are represented. The colors, the graphics. I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but there's no shortage of examples of how people use design, color, shading, all of that good stuff to convince us of one something or another. Let's see. I'm not going to go into this too much more. Uh, there's all sorts of other bad examples. So let's talk about infographics. Let's talk about how to make them real quick. All right. So there's a couple of different ways. First, I'm going to show you, because I've got it open. I'm just going to show you PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is a easy way to create one. So I'm going to start a new slide here. Now, there's another tool that I can show. There are other tools that are good, but I'm going to show you uh, PowerPoint because it's actually works really well in a pinch. And so this is going to take me some time to muddle through this. So you've got your blank slide, right? So I'm going to go over to design, and I'm going to change the slide size. And if I go too fast here, slide size, customs slide size, slides sized for widescreen, letter paper. So let's just do a letter paper one. Why not? Actually, let's say you're doing a infographic for as a poster for some sort of. You have this option here. I'm going to make it a portrait. Let's do this. And so it creates this slide. Now there are many other ways, many ways to do this. I could probably, yeah, I could change this. I could, yeah, I don't know. I don't really. It's just gonna mess things up. Just stick with this. So, okay, we have this blank page here, and now I can go into all of my other tools and create something fairly substantial. So if I want to, let's say I'm going to insert a picture. Let's say in fact, I'm gonna go ahead and insert a stock image, and it'll give us this stuff. So let's say I was going to do an infographic about summer. I don't know. I can insert this image and let's say I'm going to insert a shape. In fact, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to format the background over here. This will change the color of the background. Maybe I can change the color here. You can see this. I know this is pretty tiny. But what it's doing is I'm just sort of tweaking this a little bit, changing the colors a bit. Trying to get it so it lines up a little bit. It's not going to be perfect, but I'll stick with that. Anyway, I'm going off on a designy tangent here. I'm going to change the color to this as well, I think. So I'm going to go back to my eyedropper, change that to... Anyway, so here we have the start of, say I'm going to do an infographic about bees. Let's start with that. I'm going to do my text box. I'm going to make this super big, big-ish. White. Nope, not going to do that. I'm going to make it dark green. And I'm going to change it here. And so all of this is to just just starting off, right? We're starting off our infographic here. I'm going to insert a text box so that I can add some text. Bees are disappearing. I don't know if that's even the case anymore. So let's see. Bee populations in Wisconsin. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of quick research here. Yeah, I should have done this beforehand, but honeybee colonies, all this information. Bumblebee declines. Here we have something from UW-Madison. So this is a source that I trust. I'm not too worried about the legitimacy of this information because it's coming from a reputable university. So here again, we have visualized information. We have maps, another form of visualized info. So I might, let's see, habitat loss, pesticide use. So there's lots of information here. I'm going to go to, and I'm going. Here's if you're starting to drift off. Here's a good point to pay attention. Statista. Here is a site for all things statistical. All right, so I'm going to go to this. Um, let's say B. Let's see what it pulls up. Going to do a search. Nope. Uh, bees. Number of honeybee colonies leading honey producing U.S. states. So we might, let's take this one. Wisconsin isn't even on here. Here we have, see, now this is why I love this site. I mean, first of all, the information here is usually on point. A survey by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So a pretty reputable source. I'm not too concerned about this. I might, if I have the time and the luxury, might go to the original source itself, which they're going to give me the link to. This is a good sign that the information is reputable if they give you the link to the information. So if I want to, I can pour over this. In fact, we can go right up to 2023 March of this year, and it's going to give me all sorts of info that I'm not going to go into. But again, Statista, great site, has lots of good sources here. And so what it does, what we do have is a chart here, right? And so here is, I'm going to open up Excel. In fact, I'll just go ahead and download this. I'm going to download this piece of information. And in Excel, it's going to open up, this is great, it's going to open up the spreadsheet with this information, right? And here's the data. And even better. So what we have here is a great graph. So I can export it as a PNG file. I can't remember what that stands for. So I can open this. All right, let's show it in the folder. So I've got that. And I can drag it right in here. Now I've got my graph. I've brought it in. But let's say that I want to, this is taking an image and it's going to plop it in there. Let's say I want to do something a little bit more, I want to have a little bit more control over it. So if you remember, I downloaded a second ago, I downloaded that Excel information from Statista, right? Let me go back to that. So I can get it as a PDF. I can actually get it as a PowerPoint, which would have made even more sense. Let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. If I open it up, oh, sweet. So this will give me all the slides for this. See, this is fantastic. Oh, this is a great site. But let's say you have a piece of data that you don't have information on, or you don't have a graph. So you have your data. Going to go up here, select it all, and let's see if I can right click on this. Last time I did this in class. Okay, yeah, actually a student showed me where it was. So under insert, you've got a wealth of information that you can choose from. Let's just keep it simple and start with recommended charts. This is going to give us all of the information. Look at the differences that or the different forms of information that we have. We have see, like the map probably isn't going to work as well. Here we have a clustered bar, a clustered column. So, and this is where you have a little bit more control. So, let's say I've got, maybe this is a little bit too, not as good as I would like. But here's this. So you got a few different options here. I'm kind of curious if let's go back to this. Go back to the source. Let's open up the PDF. Let's see what I got here. Let's see where Wisconsin is on this table. And this is why it's important. Okay, so here we have Wisconsin. So I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to go to Wisconsin, add this, top in 1,000 pounds. So this is production, and according to this chart, 1919. Trying to get this. Sorry. Where are you? There we are. 1974. Okay, so this is not going to be enough to register on the. It's not going to make the top 10. Okay, but I do want to have a chart there, right? So I can have a recommended chart. If I wanted to focus on Wisconsin, this is how I could do it, right? So I've got this chart, and it's going to create it. Copy it, paste it. Now, I'm not going to mess with the background, but so you see, you have a few more options, right? It's much better to import the data, have it in a spreadsheet, be able to create it on your own. It does make things a little bit easier, because if I go here, I can make this bigger. I can resize this. I can manipulate and edit the text. This one I'm locked in, right? I can only do so much. The type is going to be really tiny. I can crop it out and add it in, but again, so there's pros and cons to this. For me, the I feel most comfortable being able to have that information, manipulate it and edit it the way I can. But again, this goes back to what we started with. Be aware that everyone has that capacity. At least everyone with the tools, they have that ability to do this as well. So I added Wisconsin. It's not even in the top 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's number 11. So really what I would do is highlight this somehow, and just indicate that it's not even in the top 10. I'm not sure what number it is. But if I downloaded the Excel data from the same source, I could organize it to determine what what place it comes in. All right, so PowerPoint actually does a pretty good job. Now, PowerPoint slides are usually pretty big size-wise. Let me just go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and let's see how big that is. 252 kilobytes. That's not too bad. Um, yeah, that's not bad at all. Probably because there's not a whole lot of information here. The more information I add to this, like images and whatnot, it's going to increase the size. But anyway, so again, next week I'll talk a little bit about PowerPoint slides, and those can get big. But for one slide, as a graphical publishing tool, actually works pretty good in a pinch. All right, so let's close out of all this. And let's go to another site. This is a popular one. Most students have already figured out how to use this. They have more expertise using this than I do. In fact, you can see past students. Yeah. These are all people that have uploaded or shared presentations. Let's see what I have. I'm not even sure what I have in here. Let's see, projects. Yeah, I don't have any. That's fine. Let's go to So Canva is an online browser-based tool where you can create really anything, any sort of design, right? So advertisements, posters, brochures, all of that you can create in Canva. So templates, I have, it's kind of a mixed bag. You're kind of locked in. I would never ever recommend paying for anything for school purposes from any of these sites. It's not, to me, it's not worth it. For what it's worth, if you're taking one of my classes, unless it's a design oriented assignment or project, I'm usually not going to get too concerned about the design quality. But, do with it what you will. It just doesn't really affect my perception much. So let's see. Let's just go ahead and search for infographic. And I'm going to get all sorts of templates, and this gets me approximately to where I want to be. Okay. I know if, it's an assignment, I've got a number of different ways. You know, I don't have too much to say about using Canva. I think most people who use this have a pretty good sense of what its capabilities are, what it can do. If you're taking this for my class, I might say, customize this template because I want to change it and make it for the assignment. All right, reasons you should be using infographic. I'm going to skip the tour. And then you just have all of these different, same sort of thing, a lot of drag and drop. I can change this very little flexibility. This is, again, the free version. I'm not going to be worried, change it. You can view text treatments, add some elements, can add some tables, drag and drop that. I can, you have all sorts of options. Like I said, I find most students are better with Canva than I am. If I were making an infographic, I would use an entirely different tool altogether, but that's me. There's all sorts of icons and whatnot. You can insert your own, I believe. You can upload, say, let's go ahead and upload a chart that I brought in before. Let's see, where are you? Where is that? Here it is. So I can upload that chart that I downloaded earlier. Notice here, well, it doesn't look too bad actually. Okay. Here's the thing about infographics. When we're making them, make sure that your text is legible. We see this a lot where, you've got all this information here. If it's not legible, it's not doing anyone any good. So you do have to, you might have to crop things off and retype them in. Again, this is one more reason to create your own. Provide yourself with as much flexibility as possible. Again, that said, most participants in my classes seem to do amazing work with Canva. All right, so Canva. The other thing that I want to mention is brochures. Now, I'm going to go into one more little thing. I need to keep this simple. I'm not going to go into the entire slide. For brochures, I find the easiest thing, sort of formula to follow, is this AIDA method. And this is a marketing formula that's been around for a little while. And basically, what it's this. You start off with grabbing the reader's attention, grabbing the audience's attention, whoever's attention you're trying to get to. And I'm gonna follow this. I'm gonna see if I can adjust this. Nope. 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 All right, sticking with this. So here we have a brochure. I'm grabbing the audience's attention. This is a brochure for some sort of flea treatment for cats. All right, so grabbing the attention. How am I grabbing the attention? Well, I've got this uh, fur buddy here on the cover, looking adorable, right? Okay, so that's grabbing the audience's attention. All right, so then once you've opened up the brochure, you want to start developing interest. Okay, so now that you've reached got my attention, so I'm going to grab another one here. Here's Green Bay's career services. Here's a career services brochure. Again, we have a happy graduate, I believe, or no, maybe a conference participant in some sort of programming. But this bold headline, "Our graduates succeed," might be an attention grabber. And then it's going to start building interest from there. It's going to tell me a little bit about what this is all about. Here's a great, oh, look at the green screen is blocking out the, that's pretty funny. That's good to know. So those little blocked out areas are green. So I've got a green screen behind me. All right, so we've got this. Here we've got the brochure. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So yeah, even though it is reversed, you can tell that it is. I've got the more information here. Then from after you start developing the interest, you want to start encouraging desire, and that sounds always a little awkward, but yeah. But really, what you're talking about is getting okay. Now that you've started to generate interest, you start thinking about okay, how am I going to turn that interest into action, into the person reading this actually doing something, acting on the information I'm giving them. So you notice that I'm going from developing the interest, and the career services here is using these charts to encourage more engagement, right? I'm starting to invest my attention. These very colorful, very well put together charts. Lots of other details here. And that all leads to, again, initiating action. What is the action that I want, that I am trying to get out of this? Well, if I'm looking through this, I go through, there's more information on the back. They're wanting to encourage students to enroll. Okay, and that's based on the careers that the job placement numbers, the data of graduates. And so at the back of this, I'm not going to bother holding it up because they're very tiny. This tells us how many graduates of each career area or major, total of 5,000. This are out of 3,700 respondents. And it just gives you all this information, and it tells us how significant each program is, and what those numbers look like. So, and it tells us like the employment information. This column here is going to be the important one, I think, and it's kind of buried questionably in the middle here. And here we have the placement numbers. So very interested to see some majors that are very popular actually have a very low job placement number, where other majors have a relatively high placement number, like surprisingly high. But I'm not going to go into that. So that's the AIDA method: attention, interest, desire, and action. Okay. And this is a pretty good marketing formula that can apply to just about anything, but for our purposes, we're looking at just a straight up brochure. Now, this is a brochure. If you're taking one of my classes, I give you a template for this, and this is kind of what it looks like, right? And so the trick, the challenge to the brochure is to keep in mind that, okay, for a trifold brochure like this, you're going to have Each um, what do you call it? Stage, attention, interest, desire, and then action, right? So now, my suggestion for this particular brochure would be to have this information included on the inside, and it is a little abbreviated version, but there's nothing. I don't think there's anything in here. Right down here at the bottom, for more information, it gives you a link to the admissions site. Now, a QR code or something that the person could take more immediate action would be a better idea. But anyway, that's me. So here we have the cover, and here's the attention, here's the interest. This is that inside panel, and here's the back cover. That's usually where the action is. You also see addresses in there. So this isn't anything that's set in stone. Be aware of that. But so if you got it like a brochure in the mail, they would be obvious. They would often use this sixth panel, this back cover, where addresses go. So the action would probably be on the fourth panel here on the inside. So right along here, they would have some sort of action. And that's a brochure. That's fairly straightforward as well. There is, I believe, a template that you can download for using Word. In fact, if I start to do one Office, let's see, brochure, see what they give me, and they'll give you all sorts of other again templates. They're great, but again, you can it can be a struggle. So again, the title, here we have the interest, here's the action here. So again, to contact us, and here's so yeah, there's some decent designs. Again, whenever you use a template or use information any sort of information or design that is pre-made, templated, whatever, it's good in a pinch as you go through, become more developed with your skills. You may find yourself getting frustrated with the limitations because you can hit those fairly quickly. All right, so I knew this was going to run a little bit over because we had a lot to cover. I may have to go back and create some smaller videos just to address the specific areas. But anyway, this is information visualization. Taking data, turning them into charts, taking those charts and applying them to brochures. Or, in fact, I'll just show you real quick since I've got you here. Where was that? Oh, I closed Excel. Oh well. Same with Word. Just like I took that chart from the Excel chart and dragged it into the PowerPoint slide, you can do that with Word too. This isn't to celebrate the Microsoft products in any way, but if you're a student here at UWGB, you get access to them for free. So why not use them and take advantage of them? So anyway, my name is Chris Berzicki, assistant professor English and Humanities at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay, running out of breath, getting dehydrated. This stream, Together We Write, is done sporadically over the summer, a little bit more regularly during the school year. This could not be possible, however, without the generous support of the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. Through a grant, I was able to purchase all of this lovely equipment so you can hear my voice as clear as possible and capture me using this lovely camera. Anyway, that's enough of that. Have a great week. This is June, July. Oh, we're almost halfway through July, so only another month and a half before summer's over and school begins. The whole school year starts again. So enjoy it while you can. Take care.